Hi there guys, I hope you are all having a good day. Now, David Haye has explained the very moment he knew his career was over when he was fighting Tony Bellew in their rematch on May 5th, 2018. This is what David Haye had to say about the end of his career and that moment that he knew it was all over for him in boxing. I knew it about 35 seconds into the first round of the second fight with Tony Bellew. It just felt all wrong. It felt really weird. I've never had it before. It just didn't feel like a boxing match. It felt really strange. I was kind of posturing and hoping something would click into how it always was, and it just didn't click at any stage. Even in the early rounds, the rounds I was winning, it just felt like everything was an effort. Even to move and bounce, it was all an effort. I'd see opportunities after they'd gone, whereas before I'd see them and just deal with it. But it just got to a point where I couldn't see and it was just too late, where I'd normally slip and counter and I was getting hit. It was a feeling I've never had before, and I would never like to have that feeling ever again, to be brutally honest. I'm glad the fight ended as conclusively as it did, so it doesn't leave me with any thoughts that maybe I could do a little bit better. If it wasn't for my Achilles, then I could have done it. I knew that was it. I can remember that feeling of, that's it. You've pushed it as far as human possibly to push it. You've given it a good go. You've given yourself the best chance. You're as healthy as you can ever be. You're as strong, as fit as you can ever be. But it's not about strength or fitness. It's about how much fight your body can fight. And once that flame's out, it's out for good. So there we have it. That is what David Haye has had to say about his conclusive fight with Tony Bellew, the rematch that captured everyone in the UK. Now, obviously, it was an epic event, and David Haye was expecting to get back on track with that win. He did say in the build-up to the fight, this could be his last fight, whether he wins or loses. Perhaps he knew it was coming to a close. I mean, he was about 38 when he got in the ring anyway, so it was coming to a close for David Haye. And what David Haye is saying here is clearly just another example of a fighter growing old overnight. It doesn't always happen gradually. You don't see a gradual decrease in their performance. It seems to just happen. And clearly David Haye just thought, that's it, I'm done. And there was nothing that he could do. His body just wouldn't respond in the way it normally does, because obviously David Haye had that first fight with Tony Bellew. Now, while he didn't look great, there were still things that he was doing okay, and his body was responding to the things that he wanted it to do. He was landing shots here and there, and he did win the first 5 rounds of that fight. So David Haye still had it then. Not necessarily as good as he always has been, but he still had it. In the second fight, the flame went out. And I think it's pretty obvious for all of us who were watching that the flame had gone out, that David Haye's career was done. Obviously, David Haye has an illustrious career, undisputed at cruiserweight and heavyweight world champion. He's a 2-weight world champion, so I think he's a very underrated fighter considering his achievements. But that was it for David Haye. If he wanted to do it, he should have done it before, because he had about 4 years out of the ring. And as a fighter, I don't believe you can lose that much time when you want to be a professional athlete, especially getting hit in the head. Now, obviously, heavyweights don't have to make weight. That is why they can go on a lot longer, in my opinion. Obviously, you see many heavyweights going into their 40s, and in my opinion, that's just because they don't have to make weight. I believe making weight for fighters does drain fighters, and I think it takes a little bit away from them every time they have to do it, especially if they are squeezing into a weight. Now, obviously, David Haye had to make cruiserweight, and while he probably didn't struggle too much to make cruiserweight, it's still making weight. Because you imagine the stress the body is put under during a training camp, and then you go and try and cut weight, cut 10 pounds overnight, just by starving your body of water and things like that. So it can't be good for you, and as I said, it must strip something away from a fighter every time they have to do it. Now, I think it was pretty obvious for all of us. We could see what happened to David Haye. We could see he didn't have it anymore. He just was pushing out his punches, and even the public workout, where he was showing a bit of his training off, he didn't really look like he had it. He looked a bit stale and slow, not necessarily really powerful as well. And during the fight, a lot of his weight was on his front foot, which meant he wasn't transferring the weight when he was throwing his punches. His weight was already on his front foot, meaning there is nothing on his punches that he is throwing. And in addition to that, he was not light on his feet. So when he tried to close that distance on Tony Bellew, that moment where he did get dropped, he tried to fight on the inside with Tony Bellew. And Tony Bellew is a very underrated inside fighter. He does pick good shots on the inside. But David Haye had all his weight on his front foot. He leapt in and he got caught with something that backed him up. He went back to the ropes and he couldn't find a way to get away from Tony Bellew. He just waited for David Haye to commit to his punches and then landed a counter which dropped David Haye. And from that moment onwards, it was always going to be Tony Bellew controlling the fight because David Haye couldn't find a way back. As I said, his weight was all on his front foot. You imagine taking a punch when all of your weight is on your front foot. Not only do you have to take the power of the guy punching you, but you're also using your own momentum to make the punch more powerful. Obviously, if you're on your back foot, then it takes some of the sting out of the punch. But David Haye was on his front foot, which meant all of the power was on the punch. Nothing was being taken off of it. And obviously, David Haye explained he's never felt like that before and he never wants to feel like it again, because he was taking the full power of those punches. And Tony Bellew is a very heavy hitter as well. He wasn't always so much at light heavyweight, but as he moved up to cruiserweight and heavyweight, it was clear that Tony Bellew had that potent punching power, and clearly David Haye just couldn't deal with it because he was unable to use his feet, he was unable to see the shots coming. And as I said, Tony Bellew landed a counter when David Haye was on the ropes, when David Haye was throwing, and David Haye didn't see it coming. He just walked right onto it, and that dropped him. But despite that, he managed to survive the 4th round, but the 5th round spelt the end for David Haye when he leapt in with a shot, walked onto a huge shot from Tony Bellew, and that was it. He got sent crashing to the canvas in a way we have never seen David Haye crash to the canvas, and he got up, and that was it. The referee soon stopped it after that, and that stoppage was in David Haye's best interest because Tony Bellew was going to go to work. So that was it for David Haye. David Haye knew after that fight that he was done. In fact, he knew within the fight that he was done. And as I said, some fighters do just grow old overnight. You can see fighters sit down at the stool and come out after that round just completely different. It's all gone, that's it. And David Haye explained it perfectly. The fire went out, and when the fire goes out, that's it. It doesn't come back. When a fighter's flame goes out, it's never going to come back. And I think that's true as well. This sport, boxing, is a great sport. Everyone loves it. Everyone is addicted to it. But it definitely does not reward anyone for outstaying their welcome. Clearly, the time is done for David Haye. He had a great career. He was a great fighter, 2-weight world champion, undisputed at cruiserweight as well. So there wasn't much more that David Haye could have done in the sport of boxing. He'd done everything that he set out to do. One of the big ones for him was to become heavyweight world champion. And he'd done that against one of the biggest heavyweights in history, Nikolai Valuev. And David Haye saying that he was glad the fight with Tony Bellew ended as conclusively as it did. And I agree with him, that was a good thing as well, because there was no thought in his mind thinking, I could give it another go, I could do better, because he couldn't. He knows that he can do no better than he done. He was in the best shape he could possibly be. He gave it all he had, but it just wasn't there anymore. And while it was a crushing defeat in a grudge match, it was the best thing for David Haye because he will never think, maybe I could have had just one more. He knows that was the end. He knows that that was a conclusive defeat to Tony Bellew. And in addition to that, the best thing for me was David Haye finished his career on his feet. He didn't go down. He wasn't stopped when he was on the canvas. He wasn't knocked out cold. He finished when he was on his feet. Yes, he did get stopped, but still he finished his career on his feet. And I could wish no more for any boxer getting in that squared circle. Guys, what are your thoughts on this? David Haye explaining he knew his career was over 35 seconds into that fight with Tony Bellew. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, click the thumbs up and subscribe if you are new. Thanks guys.